Well, hello, world. Today, kind of a big announcement, I suppose. With AI Workforce, we've decided to open source our front end. It's underneath AIPL Labs, is where we've put the code. It's here at AIPL Labs dash labs slash AI UI, and you have access to it. It's under an MIT license. And what this is the front end for, let me just go ahead and log in here. Just kind of show you what this is the front end for. So this is the, our entire AI workforce application, if you will, the front end to it. It's not the back end, but we have open sourced the front end and the, let's call it the middle tier. We call this the AI Workforce Common. Just to kind of give you a heads up of all the good work we've done here. So if you go to the AIPL Labs project, there's now an AI UI, AI Worker Common, which is the common code that's just needed to be shared so that the front end and back end can be can communicate effectively, let's say. And then we also have some other repositories in there, like there's one called AIPL Components and AIPL Components Demo, which was let's say an initial foray into creating a set of React components for doing AI kind of things, and so those are still there and they would still work, but I think we're moving more towards this AI UI thing, and I'll explain why in a minute. And then there's the AIPL project, which is basically just the documentation for the AIPL language. So I apologize if it might be a little confusing that we're using AIPL in multiple different contexts to potentially mean different things. So there's the kind of the grand AIPL project, and then the AIPL programming language. It's just sort of a marketing branding thing. I'm the tech guy, so so please don't blame me too much. But that's the way things kind of went here. So anyway, so we have this AIPL Labs GitHub repo that has all this kind of the open source stuff, right? And so, like I said, with that, there's the AI Worker Common, which again is it's a kind of a large body of code for all the things that we need to interact with between the front end and the back end for our application. And it's open source just because it needs to be open for because effectively it's a dependency for AI UI. So that's just kind of how that worked, right? It was just easier for us to kind of open source that, and it's really just a bunch of like TypeScript definitions and maybe some code that is shared between the front and the back end. So anyway, that's what that is. And so you can kind of take a deep dive and look, if you will. But today we're going to be talking about the AI UI and what that project is, and kind of what it means for developers. I think this is I'm excited about it. I think this is, we've been working on this AI workforce and AIPL project for quite a while now, doing this character creation or agent creation, and allowing users to create agents and interact with them in kind of a chat style and so forth. And so we've had some abilities to go out and do things in the real world with AIPL, like go out to third-party websites and interact with them in the course of interacting with the agents and so forth. And so we've had that for a while with AIPL and using the agents inside the chat interface. What this is this is a kind of a whole new world of interaction, if you will. So for a while now, kind of my little motto has been the AI is the interface. And you know what? I think if we start with a demo, I think that of kind of how that works, I think that'll entice you hopefully to continue to pay attention to kind of what we're doing here. So let me show you kind of the end result, and then I'll back up and show you how we got there. So what you see is that repo, that UI repo, and so what I'm going to do, I've already installed it and all that sort of stuff. So all you have to do is when you download the repo, you'll do bun install. I'll do it, and it'll do very quickly because I've already installed it. I use bun, rather than npm or pnpm or anything like that. I just happen to like that one, but it should work with any. Use your preference as you will. There, I know that can be a contentious issue sometimes, but anyway. So bun install, and then you'll just do bun start. Okay. So bun start will we use Vite, or is it pronounced Vite? I've heard it pronounced a couple of different ways, but I think Vite is the correct pronunciation. And it'll just open up the typical web dev sort of thing, and now let me go over to that browser window. You can kind of see it loading up. It's going to take a second when it first loads, or potentially I don't have it. Okay. So here we go. So here's the demo that you're going to see that's initially brought up when you open this project. Now you'll see later on that this is vastly more to this project. This is what we're calling an app front, and that's a word or a phrase that I've created because I couldn't find a word or phrase out there being used in the industry that really kind of describes what I want, and I want to be clearly communicate what's going on here. And so this is sort of the React entry point into your web application. So if you're a React developer, you're familiar with doing a React and then React, render, right, and then that you give it the top level component that's going to do everything, right? So it's sort of like that, but it's kind of a wrapper around that. And I'll explain what I mean by that. It's sort of to kind of get around all the boilerplate of the React, but it's more importantly because we do a lot of kind of complex things, with the inference and the streaming of stuff back and forth between the front and back end. And so it just made more sense to kind of open source our entire front end to give users this capability that I'm about to describe. So anyway, so you can see this is sort of a demo application, just you're ordering a pizza. So the idea here is that you have an application and you want the to have the ability for conversing with an agent or talking with an agent and having the agent understand the like the web form here in this instance, the ordering a pizza form, and have the agent be able to interact with that form and obviously know the current state of the form and so forth. So it can make it can do intelligent things on your web application, right? So let's just go ahead and get started. I'll start a chat here.
Hello, what kind of pizza would you like?
And I'll go ahead and enable. We do as part of our thing here, we have ASR and TTS, so text to speech, and basically ASR is where the listen to your microphone kind of stuff, right? So we'll do that. So we'll let him speak with this button, right? And then we'll allow. All right, hey, yeah, give me a pepperoni with mushrooms and onions, please.
Sounds delicious. And how about a size for you?
Make it large, and I only want mushrooms on the right.
No problem, large it is. And I'll make sure the mushrooms are only on the right side. Anything else for you?
Oh no, I want the pepperoni and onions as well.
Got it. So, large pepperoni. Mushrooms just on the right and onions. Anything else to add?
All right, I'll turn off Anthony's ears here, and you can see that we had an interaction with the pizza demo here. There's a little bit of a hiccup there where it thought I just wanted mushrooms on the right, which you I'll give it the benefit of the doubt there. And then, I corrected it and understood the current state of the form and so on and so forth. So this is just the demonstration of, how you can interact with, all the different kind of typical form controls, a drop down list box, checkbox, radio boxes, an input box, all those. Actually, the input box one is kind of interesting. So I'll just type it just because it's easier when I'm talking, doing a demonstration. I'll say, make the pepperoni spell out happy birthday. And I misspelled pepperoni, but I might make that a big deal. All right. And of course, when you now add two special instructions. All right. So it's not a perfect thing going on here. And maybe that's a good thing that we had this little hiccup here, because that is the current state of agents and LLMs and so on and so forth, that they are somewhat unreliable, right? And you could have, I don't know if we're going to blame the LLMs here or my miscommunication here, but that's an important thing to get across here, is that we want to keep the user in the loop, right? So there's a user interface here that we have here with the chat and the pizza thing on the left, and but ultimately the user needs to be in control of what's going on, and we've done that. And this is sort of getting into how user interfaces work in general, right? So we have a user interface, and the whole reason we have user interfaces is to have a user, you're right, interface with the backend systems and so forth. And so we've created these things that we typically call form controls and so forth, that users are now used to, right? 40 years ago, if you showed some random person this, they probably wouldn't understand what the hell this thing is at all, right? But users have adopted and understand how to use web forms and so forth, and so they know how to click on a radio button. And we, the industry or society or however you want to put that, has put a lot of time and effort into training ordinary humans on how, if I click on this little thing here, that we're going to get a drop down list box and it's going to look like this, and I select the option, and they just sort of intuitively know that, right? Because that's just in their background of knowledge. So it does two things, right? It allows them to control this thing, right? Interact with it. I can change it from thin to thick and so forth. But it also does the important thing of displaying to the user the current state of what's going on here, right? So they know that they're getting a pepperoni and mushroom and onion pizza, right? That's large, and so that's the feedback loop, if you will. And so we need, and this is maybe a philosophical thing, but that appears to me to be the way that we're going to progress, at least for the next little while. And it's going to get more to more where we're going to interact with the our LLMs or agents or AIs or however you want to describe that more and more, and just kind of have them do everything. We're going to trust them more and more with things. But at the current state of play, we want to be more assistive, right? We want to have the agent be in the loop to help the user, but we also want to make sure that the user is the one kind of in charge, right? And is making the big decisions, right? They're going to click the place order button here, and it's going to go off and make that order happen, right? And so that just appears to me to be the current state of play of where we are as sort of society in general, because I don't think we're quite at the point where we want to trust, or we're as trusting of the AI technology to just kind of go off and do everything. But and obviously it can, to be perfectly frank, it probably is near or at that point, but there's kind of a we have to get used to it kind of thing, right? We have to. Not everyone's kind of on. What's the famous quote? You know, the future's here, but it's just not equally distributed, right? Is one thing that people often say, and I think that's kind of where we're at. Like, and that distribution isn't necessarily maybe on the technology side; it's just on the society in general, sort of catching up, getting used to these things, and feeling comfortable with it to some degree, right? So it's a little bit of both, right? You know, it's not perfect, perfect on either side. But so this is where we're coming together, right? So anyway, so that's the demonstration of how it works, and hopefully I've wowed you a little bit that you know we can interact and so forth. So it's a very obviously a very simple kind of contrived demo, you know, obviously, but part of that is just to kind of keep it simple for you for everyone to understand what's going on here. So let's go off of this and get into the code, and I want to show you how you can do this today, right? Because that is, I think, actually pretty innovative and exciting. So I'm going to close this down. I'm going to go back to the code. So like I said, this is the project that's currently running this. And the important thing to note is that we're, you know, as kind of a freebie, giving you access to this chatbot that you can run on your on your side, right? So I'll explain how all that works in a minute, as far as like how you can get access. But first, I'm going to go into the code a little bit, and let's just search for pizza demo. So the important thing to note here is that this is the full project for AI Workforce, or the full user interface side of the project. So there's a lot of code here, and so I want to be kind of upfront about that. And this is kind of part of that app front and this mechanism that we chose with which to interact with other developers, if you will, who want to use our stuff. And so and really what it is, what it boils down to is that it's kind of complex to create React components that can stream text back and forth and do, like I said, all the things, the ASS, the ASR and the TTS and the image generation and all that sort of stuff. It's kind of just difficult to do these sorts of interactions with React and kind of keep it simple, if you will. And so what we've done is we've decided, well, hey, we've already got this whole application that has, you know, the chatbot and all that sort of thing going, and we want to do these AIPL components, which is the form control stuff, right? And it just kind of dawned on well, me that the easiest way to accomplish that and kind of get out the door quickly is to just open source the whole front end, and then just let other people create applications using our front end, all our front end code, right? Because there's just a lot of code here for doing a lot of things, and so that just became the mechanism by which we wanted to do this, because it just gives a lot of value, I feel, to developers who are just wanting to create an application, kind of maybe do a prototype, get the thing up and running quickly, right? Because that's the whole thing with software development, and especially with a thing with like AI and so forth, where it's this new technology. You want to get your prototype out there quickly so you can, you know, create the next neat, cool thing for whatever. So this is the way to create something very quickly, because you've already got a full front end, right? So you could actually deploy this front end, right? You can do a unbuild. Let's just go ahead and do it real quick. Oop, run build. Let's get that syntax right. And it's going to build it. It's going to transform it. It can take a minute. You know, like I said, it is kind of a large project. So this bundles all the source code and all of the model files and so forth as well. And there are a few models. Those are kind of blobs. Those are binary objects that run on the browser side. And primarily those are used for the ASR stuff, for like listening on the microphone, just to make sure that runs smoothly and cleanly. That was that was a large amount of work, believe it or not, to make sure that you could you could converse with the agent and interrupt it and and kind of talk with it like you would just talk with another human here. So this is taking a moment here. So I'm not I'm there's going to be some warts here, right? You're seeing all these warnings and so on and so forth, and then you're going to say, "Holy mackerel! This thing is 5 megabytes gzipped. That's huge, right? Oh my goodness, right?" So this is not a small project. This is not a small thing, right? To have all these things work. And I invite others. Hopefully, by open sourcing it, we'll get some ideas on how to slim this down and make it better. Currently, it seems to work well and load fast and all that sort of stuff. But I just want to be kind of upfront that there's some warts here. This is a project that's been going along for a while, and it has some. It's not perfectly pristine code by any means, but we'll get there together. Okay. So anyway, now you've built it, and what I wanted to show you here is that obviously this code is now in the dis folder, right? Where it has all of the index and all this pizza HTML is kind of an old demo file. Like I said, kind of warts and all. So this is the old static, what we call the static demo for doing this interacting with the form stuff. So we called that the overlay mode. But anyway, we're not going to discuss that today. Right now we're discussing how to deploy it. So you can see that it's deploying this, the index.html. It's going, it's built it. It's gone into the assets folder to get all the JavaScript. So it's just your typical bog standard static website deployment. Push this code anywhere you want, and it'll work, right? And so that's that's how it works, right? In that case, it's sort of like we're using the standard v build stuff. Here, let me show you the package JSON how that's working there at the hood, right? So build, byte build, right? So that's how that works. Okay, so now let's get into actually how we want to maybe change things or how we want to work with it. So let's look at, to begin with, let's go back to the project. And I want to show you some documentation because I'm not always going to be there. And you're going to have to, I don't want to, don't install. Okay, everybody's trying to ask me to update everything. All right. So let's go back to the website. We're just going to jump back and forth here. And we're not going to that. We're going to this. Okay, so this is like I said, this is the project home for AI UI. And, there's just a couple of requirements. We recommend, you're going to have Node, duh. And then you're going to have, or you don't have to have, but we would recommend you use Bun. And it's just because that's what I use for development, and I find it fast and easy, and I know that it works. Anyway, so that's why I recommend Bun. Anyway, so further documentation, right? So we have, and this is going to expand out as we add to this. But for right now, there's kind of two sets of documents that I want to go over with you right now. And one describes this concept of an app front, okay? And let me take a little swig of coffee here. All right. So what is an app front? Like I said, an app front is our mechanism. It's kind of the entry point into the code base, right? So this is where if you have a React application, you typically have like an app.tsx or some sort of file like that, where it's sort of like your main component, right? And then you kind of render all your other components underneath it. So it's somewhat like that. Like we obviously have that ourselves where we do that. And then our kind of top level component just it's an entry point into that, right? And so it you don't have to do any of the typical React boilerplate stuff, which isn't a lot, to be perfectly frank, but you don't have to do any of it. But you do have to do our boilerplate. So I apologize for that. There's always some degree of boilerplate or something you have to understand or what have you. So I'm just going to go out, you install the project, right? And then you edit the code in this pizza demo. So if you just click on this, right, it's going to take you to the actual code inside of GitHub, right? And so you can kind of see what the pizza demo is. And you can see it's not a lot of code to kind of get it all up and running and so forth. Most of the code is all style sheet stuff, to be frank, just to kind of get that going good. And then, here's the real meat of the thing, right? Here's the actual React component. And it's just called pizza demo. Pizza container is just this styling, right? So if you're familiar with styled components in React, that's all that is. We're just using the standard, motion style stuff, right? So we have the pizza container, so that's just for the styling, and then you can just see we're just kind of normal reactive stuff, and then you'll get into we have these things called like AIPL select, right? So these are what we're calling our AIPL components. And so that's where all the kind of the magic happens, where we understand. So this is simultaneously a React component, and you can do kind of all the normal React component stuff with it for a selector, right? I'll actually, I'll just go into the code here in a minute, but just trust me. It's a you can do all the React on change event sort of stuff and all that jazz. For selects, and then we have radio groups. Radio groups a little bit more complex because there's no native kind of radio group thing. That's just not really a concept, but inputs is, right? So you have AIPL inputs, type equals checkbox, and then we have this thing called an AIPL name. And I'll describe what that is, but that's effectively you're telling us what this thing is in the context of any conversations or anything you're doing with AI related, right? Like we have to know where to know where everything is. That's kind of your link point, if you will, right? And then we have this AIPL radio group of onion segment. So it's the segments for like all on the left or on the right, or give me the onions on the whole thing, and so forth. So that, like I said, this is kind of a simple demo, and it just shows you all of that. Underneath that, we have this one little thing called AIPL chat. So it's the component, the React component for that little chat thing on the side, and it's just one React component. And we were able to do it one React component, like that, because obviously you're getting all of our code behind it, right? So which is non-trivial amount of stuff going on there. Okay, so that's how that looks, and let's go back to the docs. All right, so there's the app front. So there's the pizza demo code that I show you. A little joke there, profit. So how do you create a new app front, right? So you're not going to want to, maybe you have no interest in pizza, creating a pizza app. Maybe your application, 1,000,000% certain your application is going to be way different, right? You have a different vision for what you want to create and how you want to do it and all that sort of stuff, right? So what you do is you just create this thing called a new React component, right? Which we just call here my new app front, right? And you'll place it, you can put it literally anywhere you want. We recommend putting it in the app front directory just to kind of keep things tidy, but you might have another way you want to organize it. But then you will add a reference. And so this is where it kind of, I've created a new thing in the world, so I have to. It's a little bit ugly. I'm gonna be perfectly upfront about that. But what you have to do is you have to add this your component to something called the app fronts constant, which I'll click on that now. And it's just a constant. This is more just TypeScript, JavaScript stuff, right? Where we kind of have a reference to, hey, here's the name of the thing, right? All these app fronts, like there's the pizza demo one, and then our like the AI workforce one is in there too. It's called Power User Spa, right? Spa, single page application, and that's in there too. We also have one called Playground and one called Overlay, right? So Overlay is again kind of this other overlay mode for like if you want to inject a script tag to have the chat work, and you didn't want to have to do all the React stuff, and you just wanted a kind of a simple chatbot sort of thing that would maybe have some limited interaction with the form control or the HTML on there, or you would do this overlay mode. But we won't go into that today. This is going to run along anyway. And then playground's another, you know, thing we were doing, right, for playing around with chatbots and so forth. But power users kind of that main, and that's really more of a, you know, creating agents and testing them out and creating these what we call public access points or PAPs and so forth. So that's how that works. And I invite you to create an account, and I'll show you how to do that here in a little bit. But anyway, so you have to put it here, and you have to, because this is essentially where we link the name here with the actual React component, right? So at the end of the day, we have to have a name for what you're calling this thing, and so that's just how that linking works. And so there's really no magic there at all, right? And then you have to edit the Vite config file to reference it, and I'll open that up now here. And so this is your kind of your standard Vite config. If you're kind of familiar with that build tool at all, it's just the one that we use. I think it's pretty popular, and I can recommend it. I can wholeheartedly recommend it. I think it's pretty good, and it's what we're using in this project. So that's maybe, you know, part of the thing here is you're buying into our conception of the tools that we're using behind the scenes to kind of get everything done. And so you know, you can leverage that. You don't have to make a decision on what build tools and frameworks and so forth are you going to use, right? So this is sort of like you have a production ready app, right? Where all those decisions have already been made, and you're just going to kind of follow hopefully the happy path to creating your application within this kind of ecosystem, if you will. So so you can see here there's some defines is really what I want to bring your attention to. So this is, in case you didn't know, this is how you actually define things in Vite for kind of global variables, right? And so we just use this mechanism for kind of setting things up and configuring. And it seems to work pretty well, so I'm pretty happy with it. We've been using it for a while with things like the build and the app version and all that sort of stuff. But now we're using it for these three things in particular. The home base, which is essentially the URL to your back end, right? We just call that internally. You'll see that when you look at the code, there's two things we call it. We call it home base, or we call it AI base, either one. Then there's the PAP ID, which I'll explain what that is in more detail. But a PAP is, again, public access point. And what that is essentially, you could kind of think of it as an access key to talking on the back end. So that's kind of what that is. It's sort of identifying which agent you're going to communicate with, right? And so that you have access to communicate with that agent. And then we have this thing here that I'm describing right now called the app front, right? Which is right now pizza demo, right? But we could change that to the power user spa or what have you. And I'll show you how to kind of create your own here in a minute. But anyway, so that's how that works, and that's where we get pizza demo, right? Remember, we have pizza demo there, and then that's this right here, right? This pizza demo. You can't really see my mouse. I apologize, but hopefully see I just highlighted that. So that's where that is. So how do you add it to the app front? Kind of shown that. Oh, how do you add AIPL components to the app front? So I've shown you how to create kind of a bog standard React thing, right? Like you would, your code goes here, right? But we need a little bit more if we're going to make it kind of interesting, right? To use all these AIPL components and the AIPL chat and all that sort of stuff. And so we have to configure it, right? To tell the agent or the LLM or whatever you want to call it, the information about how your application works, right? Like how in the context of the pizza demo, what the toppings are that you can have. What is the possible set of toppings that you can have on this pizza, right? Or in the fact that you can only have it on the left and the right and the middle, right? You can't have a third of it, So there's constraints and limits and so forth to describing what you can do with your application, right? We have to. There's a boundary here that we're interfacing with both the programmer, right, at the programmer level, right, of like types and objects and these sorts of things, right? That is kind of traditional programming, sort of world, and then on the other hand, we have to describe that world, that programming world, if you will, to the agent, right? And so this AIPL component provider configuration is how we do that, right? That's the kind of the magic behind the scenes, if you will, on how to get that communication flowing smoothly, right? And so we don't go into a lot of detail here on exactly how we do it because it's kind of complicated to be frank. But I want to show you enough so that you understand kind of how it works. So the way it works is there's this concept. If you're a software developer, which probably you are if you're listening to my voice right now, I'm sure you've run across things called types, right, and type systems and all that sort of stuff. Well, it turns out that type systems are very good at describing objects, right? Describing data. They're just very, very good at that, right? Because that's kind of their job in a way to give you these limits and these things you can and cannot do with these objects. And so we've just found that to be a good metaphor and mechanism for programmers or developers to interface with the agents and the AI world and so forth in a kind of a programmatic sort of way where you're not using like natural language prompts and so forth. Now we are doing that at the end of the day on LLMs to kind of tell it how it's supposed to do its thing, because that's just how LLMs work, right? We have to just give it some prompting on the back end, right? On hey, there's this type and here's what this type means and so on and so forth. But the idea here is that the AI UI developer, right, or the AIPL developer, does not have to understand any of that, right? They understand types. They understand types and type systems and what it means to kind of do things in more of a traditional sense, let's say, right? Where there's kind of tight boundaries on what you can and cannot do, right? That pizza form only has, because the business of creating a pizza, maybe there's only three sizes of pizza, right? So you have to communicate that effectively, right? There's only small, medium, and large. That's all there is, right? And so we have to create as developers, right? We have to create a user interface where those are the only options available, right? The user can't just choose anything. And so typically when you get into a complex web application, you're going to become familiar with types. If you're working on a project of any size, right? You're going to be working with, that's why TypeScript is so popular and so forth. So I'm not going to try to sell you on types and type systems if you're not already a fan, but that's just kind of how this project rolls, right? Yeah, that's to be frank, that's why we're able to kind of do what we're able to do with the forums and so forth, because the LLMs also have a concept of they know what a type is, right? And they know how to understand it and so forth. So yeah, it just works out well, right? So now we've adopted something called Typebox, and I'll just click on this link to kind of go to that real quick. And Typebox, if you're not familiar, it touts itself as a JSON schema type builder with static resolution for TypeScript, right? And so, we're a TypeScript shop here, and so we do all our stuff in TypeScript, front and back end, believe it or not. There's obviously a little Python here and there because there just has to be, but most of it's in TypeScript. And anyway, so we're using this Typebox project, which if you're not familiar with Typebox, it's a really cool project, to be perfectly frank. It's really neat. It's a good sort of mechanism for building type systems and translating type systems from one way, like from TypeScript types to like here it's like JSON schema. JSON schema, at the end of the day, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about TypeScript and how it works. At the end of the day, TypeScript or JSON schema is sort of the lingua franca of all the types that Typebox kind of uses, right? It kind of boils everything down to JSON schema, and then it kind of goes back up the chain, right? So it goes up and down the chain on that. And so you can kind of convert it back and forth. Now, we have some code for doing that conversion back and forth. It's not quite all built in the type box. We kind of rely heavily on this JSON schema formats that they use internally, and then we've kind of built some stuff around that so we can get the information that we need to get out of the type at the end of the day. But the cool thing with this is that it's, you know, obviously programmatic, right? So you can either, you know, kind of hard code it or, you know, if you have another thing that can kind of infer whatever your object is and then create a type structure out of it, it gives you a lot of freedom, right? So just kind of create, oh, hey, this thing's a string, and oh no, this thing's an integer, right? And there's an object of these things, and so you can kind of describe how they work and so forth. Now, you can't do everything that Typebox can do, right? Because Typebox can describe a full type system with that's very complex and so forth. We handle, I think, most cases. I'm sure as we release this, we'll discover cases where we don't handle it well, and we'll have to update it and so forth. But I think it handles, you know, everything pretty well. But we'll figure it out as this thing gets used, right? And so now I'm going to show you the pizza demo configuration. So it's this thing, right? The AIPL component provider, what you would hand to that, like config equals, and then here's the config. And I'm going to show that to you now. Now the this file here, hopefully you can kind of see, describes you know, all the things that were on the screen, right? So we have the size and the crust, right? So there's this thing called size, and it's small, medium, large, crust, thin, thick, stuffed, cheese kind, toppings. So toppings are like, you know, like type literal, right? So it can be pepperoni, mushrooms, onions, blah, blah, blah. And then we have these different segments, right? It's for whole, left, right, and so forth. And I'll show you how these kind of tie together. It's this naming convention, right? So these names, like pepperoni segment, that's meaningful. That's a meaningful name you'll have to remember and reference later, right? Or size, or special instructions, right? Which is just a string, right? And then we have this thing ID pizza, right? So we know that this thing is a pizza. Some of this, so it's sort of like I said, it's kind of half and half, right? Half of this is the developer kind of describing for themselves what their domain is, right, for these objects. But we're also using that description to tell the LLM what's going on, right? So these names like bacon segment, right, and pizza and so forth, we actually share that with the LLM, right? And so they're kind of not just arbitrary identifiers within these things, right? Where these things have meaning, right, to the LLM. Like, what is a size? What does crust mean? What is cheese? What kinds of cheese and so forth, right? So we're relying on the LLM to correctly interpret this, and you can give hints. You can say there's hint mechanisms that you have where you can describe these things more fully if there's ambiguity or something like that, right? And we describe that to the LLM as well, right? And we, but from the programmer's point of view, they're just using this type object to create this union object or an array or what have you to describe the toppings and so forth. So that's the thing I want to get across, is that from the AI UI developer's perspective, all they have to care about is this configuration, right? Is this configuration correct? And then the AI workforce part on the back end, you know, does all the magic with the LLM to describe it and so forth, right? And you know, obviously do the communication back and forth between the AIPL components and the back end to make sure that you know, the magic happens. So that's how the configuration works. Now, let me get in a little bit on, like you've heard me talk about this PAP thing and AI workforce. So I'm just going to kind of briefly go over that just enough so that you understand how you can create one of these things, and one of these public access points, and then you can kind of create your own. Like if you wanted to create your own personality for the chat, have a different image and a different voice and a different description of their personality and characteristics and so forth, and so on and so forth. Now, within that, you can also use something called AIPL, the language, right, to do some really advanced stuff with the agents, right? And so that would be if which you can use both of these. You can use these in tandem if you want to do AIPL within the context of the agent, right? I'll show you. I'll show you just real brief on that, because that's not the goal of this little video here. But anyway, so let's just get on to it. Let's stop fapping around. All right, so the PAPs. So here's the documentation on the PAP, right? So you can said that you can create an account by going to the AI Workforce website, which let me do that real quick off screen, because I have to make sure that when I click on this link, good things are going to happen. Maybe I should have been a little bit more prepared here. Yeah, get on this particular account, and let me show you more what you're going to see when you get in here. So let me just log in. You get to see all my secret info. And let's go here. Sorry, it's taking a minute. Oh, it's taking longer than a minute, because, of course, the developer has access to all the secret things, and I don't want to show you all the secret things, so I apologize. Let me log in. Here, I'll just log in as a user here. Okay, so yeah, so let's go here now. And when I click on here, all right. So when I click here, you're going to see this screen. My screen is very populated. Your screen is going to be not as populated, but you'll have at least this AI character, right? And the AI character will look a little different, but it's the same sort of deal. And so you'll have these characters. You can create your own character if you want to create a character. There's lots of things you can do here. So there's lots of just stuff that we've developed with this application. But the thing I want to show you here is this PAP stuff. So I'm gonna let's go Anthony E. So the Anthony E, it's one of the characters. Actually, we're using Anthony F now. So we'll edit Anthony F, which is the character that we're using for our demonstration here. And so anyways, like I said, you can do all sorts of different things. You can create videos.
What kind of pizza would you like?
Right, and you can assign different voices to it, and obviously there's the image generation stuff and all that thing sort of stuff. I don't really have. He's pretty empty as far as all the other things, because he's just a very simple demo thing. Do I even have a description for it? Yeah, this description is a friendly pizza ordering assistant, but you can get pretty wild and crazy here as far as all the things you can do here. But that's kind of advanced, and I don't really want to go into all the things. So what we're going to do here is we're going to right click, and what I want to show you here is we're going to this thing called so you right click on the character, and then you go to public access points, right? So you're going to click on that. When you first click on that, you're not going to have this access point. So you'll click the create public access point, and then you can name it whatever. Just leave it access point as the default name. And then you'll have a user, and you'll click that and select a user. You probably only have the one user, so select the user that you have, right? And then you'll do this thing called copy URL, right? So you'll copy URL. I'm going to do that right now. And what that's going to do, it's going to give you access to this, what we call PAP interface, right? Which is just kind of a web interface, right, to talk to this agent. So you'll agree to our terms, and then
Hello, what kind of pizza would you like?
right, and so you can see that this is very similar to that demo. Whoops, by default we have all this turned on. I forgot about that. So it's very simple, a little chat bot on the in the bottom right, because that's kind of what it is to some degree, right? And but anyway, so that's the PAP ID. Now, when you click on that copy URL, you're going to let's go back to the. Can I go back? Here we go to PAPs. All right. So when you click on that, you're going to create that create PAP button, and then I don't think it actually is create PAP. I apologize. The documentation is a little bit wrong there. Whoops. And actually, oh, I need to, you of course, discover this sort of stuff in when you're doing it. But the assets were not pushed to GitHub, so I need to fix that. So anyway, it'll be working by the time you see this. To create a PAP. Actually, let's do it live. Let's do it right now. I'm going to show you how this thing works. I'm going to show you all the things, all the bugs. So let's just show you all the bugs, or show you all the things. Nothing up my sleeve, if you will. So what's going on here? Yeah, see how assets is not highlighted. It's because we have a get ignore for assets in our GitHub, so we need to add those manually, if you will. Commit or git add project docs assets. Yeah. Yeah. Yep, I'm well aware, but I want to do it anyway. Great, Pap. All right. Oh, do I have to do something to? Oh, I have to use force. Okay, forgot about that. I just read the warning. That would have told me. So anyway, we're coming along with a little coding with Matt time, right? All right, get us. All right, good. And we'll just say, yeah, not the greatest message in the world, but we're just doing it fast here live. And now we'll do scripts version so that we can push it, tag it and push it and so forth. And now it's tagged and pushed. And so if we go back to this and we click on create PAP button, all right, cool. Now it works. Anyway, so this is what I wanted to show you is that it's called public access points, right? And so I'm just showing you right click and the thing I just showed you, right? And then you have to choose a user. So it's important when you have a PAP that you choose a user, or else it's going to be a little bit ugly for you because there's not going to be an image for the user. Then you'll copy the PAP URL. Which is basically just going to be a URL. It's going to look something like this, right, where it says access point and then a bunch of gobbledygook, right? But it'll be in a URL form where you're kind of taken to the AI Workforce website, right? And then what you'll do is you'll just copy this part here, the access point dash whatever, right? And that's what we refer to as the PAP ID. And then you'll open up Vite config, and then for the PAP ID, you'll say, hey, use this access point instead, right? So if you go here, you'll replace this one, which is, excuse me, which is Anthony F. And you will, excuse me, you'll instead put in yours, right? And so then that will work a treat, and then that's how you'll get your own character working with that. So that's how all of that works. Uh, and so, hopefully that just kind of answers all the questions on that. How we, the you know, I guess the thing I want to communicate very strongly is this is a lot of code, and we've open sourced it in an attempt to, hopefully engage with people who are interested in creating these kinds of applications where you're wanting to create applications that are AI aware, right? That where kind of my vision. I'm not sure if I coined this phrase or not. I don't. Probably other people use it, but where the AI is the interface, right? That's kind of the vision, if you will, where you're going along, you're trying to create this application, and you want the user to not really have to understand your application very well, right? You as the application developer know your application inside and out, whatever it is. Like maybe you're booking plane tickets or you're doing whatever, right? You understand that very well, and sometimes that can be kind of a complex process, right? And the users don't really understand it very well, and they kind of want a little assistant to help them understand the page, right? And you as the application developer can inform the assistant a great deal because you have the inside knowledge of how all the things work, right? And so that allows you to craft these uh, user interface, user experiences, right, where the agent and the the agent and the application are kind of working together, right, as an assistant to the user, right? So that's kind of the whole goal and vision of this is to make the users that interaction is as smooth and easy and friendly and so forth as possible. Just to help everyone out at the end of the day, I guess. Anyway, at this point, I've been talking for what does OBS say? I've been talking for near an hour, and hopefully that's long enough. My voice is giving out. I can kind of feel it. So anyway, thanks for sticking along with me, and hopefully you'll check this project out, the AIPL Labs AI UI, and go off and build and do some cool stuff. Right? I'm very excited to see what people create from this. I think it's going to be pretty cool. Anyway, we'll catch you later. Bye.